This is Mary Ellen. I'm here today. We're going to talk to you about video for B2B marketing, which I know is one of the topics right now that I spend the most time thinking about as a content strategist. And I know that many of you are as well, just based on the questions that you ask me in our meetings. And I'm really, really excited here actually to have my partner in crime for this, Matt Callac. He is going to, well, I'll tell you a little bit more about him in a second, but some of you who work with us in the past, you probably already even recognize Matt. You may even be surprised to learn that he is in fact always had this mustache, like even as a baby. It was one of his most distinguishing characteristics. So but yeah, so a little bit about me. I am the founder and I am the lead HR tech content strategist here at RepCap. So I've spent most of my working life now, it seems, talking and writing about the future of work in some capacity with whatever term we happen to be using at the moment, whether it's the Great Resignation or future of work or like whatever. I'm also the publisher of Managing Editor magazine. You can find us over at managingeditor.com. That's a brand magazine that we run at RepCap for content marketing professionals. And before I started the agency 10 years ago, I was actually a traditional journalist, again, writing about work. I was a career advice columnist for the Washington Post and a financial editor. And when it comes to video, the person who I turn to first when I have questions, especially if it's really fancy motion graphics that look like magic on the screen, it's going to be my friend Matt. And I'm going to let him tell you a little bit about his background.
Hi, my name is Matt Callac. And while Mary Ellen spends her time talking about video, I spend my time doing video. So I've done that for a majority of my life. I started my video career in high school in a broadcasting class and went into video in college, and then professionally have been doing video for about 17 or 18 years now after graduating college. So my firm specializes mostly in creative content and motion graphics. So anytime you want something that's a little bit different and a little bit memorable, that's when I get the phone calls.
Mm-hmm. The fun thing I like about working with Matt, because I think really, I guess I met you probably a few years into having RepCap and like having the business. We are neighbors of a sort here in Baton Rouge. We do encounter each other. It was one of those things where I learned that because the film industry had such a huge presence here for so long, we actually have a lot of really amazing video and film talent that does commercial work now too. And I think that's like a super cool kind of perk of living around here. But I was really impressed by the fact that like you do B2B content even, right? So I think it's pretty easy to find people who get excited about making cool B2C brand like videos. When I knew that I loved Matt was whenever he helped me make a really exciting video about a call center. So that was when we were there together forever. It's like, let's just keep doing that. How did we make bring some whimsy and some impact into a call center video? So let's jump on here. So one of the things I think everybody knows, video is hot. But I think as a content strategist, video certainly plays a part in my mix of content formats and channels. We think about things like YouTube, we look at TikTok, we look at Reels. I mean, and it seems like everything is video. But again, a lot of this is B2C consumer entertainment type content. The question I'm asking myself in my work is, what does this mean from a B2B perspective? And I know as marketers and as content marketers, we are actually, I would say, under a lot of pressure right now to figure out how to make this work. But video is complicated. Many of us, like me, come into this from a more copy-driven background, right? Like I'm very comfortable writing long-form content copy, short-form copy, anything you want to do. I've had to learn audio and video content like through working with partners like Matt over the last few years. Like, so that's been new. So for those of us who are feeling that pressure, like I hear you. And there was a word that Matt used, actually, I think is really important. He mentioned that video is really powerful as a way to be memorable, right? And if you do it right, the purpose of video is to be memorable. So I just want to talk to you about, Matt, what do you mean by memorable? What does being memorable have to do with video?
Well, people associate, like, or I guess it's sort of like when we're doing B2B content, people think that, oh, well, it's just like I'm sharing this boring information with my B2B partners. But the thing that is most effective is sharing something that's memorable, which we think of memorable content as being the content we're given from the media, television, video. But you can do memorable content on the business side too. And the way of doing that is using metaphors, using motion graphics, and using interesting ways of turning a phrase, copywriting. It's the same sort of ways that we do it in advertising, but it's just more focused on the B2B side, rather than just thinking of like, customers in general.
I think when we work on these, sometimes I think about feelings. Like what we're actually trying to do in some cases is evoke a feeling. And I think that with B2B video, a lot of B2B content in general, we think that people make buying decisions based on facts and about numbers, when in reality, like they really don't. I mean, that's part of it. The numbers have to work, but you're really often looking at things like brand values and alignment and those feelings, like what kind of emotion can you evoke? And so I think one of the biggest mistakes I would say sometimes, Matt, that we see in working on these videos is like where people want to put a lot of copy and a lot of like facts on a video. Like, is that effective from your perspective?
It depends on the type of video it is, but for the most part, if this is just a video that someone casually watches, they're going to have like 1 to 2 takeaways max. So if you come at them with a bunch of data and statistics and whatever, they're not going to remember any of that. They're going to remember like what they felt, and they're going to remember like 1 or 2 key elements. But if you're doing something that's more like akin to a webinar where someone might be taking notes, or if you're sending out a quarterly financial report that's done through video, people are going to be prepped for that type of information. So it really just depends on the avenue for delivery and the type of video. But for the most part, if you're trying to create something that's memorable and impactful, you really can't cram in a ton of data and spreadsheet data and graphs and everything. It's more about the feeling, the motion, and the writing.
And how fast it goes. I think one of the things that like shocks me about video, and even thinking about this as somebody who's a movie fan, right? If you pay attention to this sometime, the dialogue. So when we produce videos, we do write scripts, right? And scripts in a video, there's 2 parts. There might be a voiceover that has to happen. That's part of the script. But then there's the other part of the script that is about, you really got to back up and like, what's the story that you're telling? And that's where metaphor is really, really helpful. In fact, it's like, I don't think you can make great videos without some sort of metaphorical hook, right? You've got to have something that ties it together. That metaphor is usually what will unite the words if you have a voiceover or something on the screen, and the visuals, because I think people kind of discount. If I see a common issue of people who come into this from a copywriting standpoint, it's often that they don't appreciate how much information you can convey with what's happening on the screen, as opposed to like, especially with animation, right? As opposed to just throwing words up, right? We think you got to have words, but you don't really have to have words. What are some ways, like, for example, if we wanted to convey someone being in a hurry, do we put the words being in a hurry? Or what are some ways, Matt, put you on the spot, that you would convey in a video somebody being in a hurry?
Right, like we can have someone like running down the street with papers flying around. We could have like a car zooming past traffic. There's all sorts of different things. But sometimes people get into the sort of like mindset that if I say it, I got to show it. And so they just want the words that are being said by the narrator to be on screen, which that definitely has its place. But people aren't going to remember seeing the word powerful on the screen. They're going to remember, seeing an earthquake, like an animation of an earthquake showing that something was powerful, and or that something made waves as a tsunami. So it's all about the visual imagery that goes along with the script writing and the language. And one of the common mistakes, as Mary Ellen said, that people get attached to just the wording and the copywriting as far as the words go into it. But when we write scripts for video, we have 2 columns. We have a column for the audio and a column for the video, because those 2 things are interassociated. They go hand in hand.
Right. And that other, I don't know, to me, that was the thing when I realized I could sort of let that go, that I didn't have to say it all, that there was so much more that I could convey in the details of the choices that we make in the video. The other one I think about a lot is music. is the sound that we can use can also have that impact. Again, we also get into with B2B, it's like, are people watching this with or without sound? So there's some elements there. But if you think about your favorite, like if you're looking at TikTok or you're looking at Facebook Reels, if you think about what actually makes those videos memorable, so I'm a little bit obsessed with real estate TikTok right now, not because I'm trying to buy a house, I'm really not, but what the smart real estate agents have done on TikTok and on Facebook Reels, I think is amazing, because in many cases they are explaining very complex things and breaking it down into these little snippets. And they often just involve, like, sometimes you got, what makes it memorable is, you can go read an article that says, don't go buy a house full. If you got a mortgage and you're waiting for it to close, don't go take out a store credit card and use all that money. It's going to mess up your credit, and then you're not going to be able to buy your house. Like, I can tell you that directly, and I can tell you that a million times. And personal finance people have been saying that over and over and over again. But when you see some of these really great little videos and they're like 30 seconds long, and it's like kind of like yep, nope. And then it's like, and then they show some image of somebody's like closing being canceled, the whole thing falling apart. It's like, I could never describe that to you as well as like just the image of like that person crying because now they can't get their dream house. Right. And they managed to cut all of this into like 30 seconds. And it's a combination of like just using those triggers, like those visual cues. And half the time that's just stock art. I mean, it's just stock images. It's kind of crazy. And a person dancing. Some person badly dancing. Why is that memorable? Because who does that, right? It makes a video of that. All right, so we talk about memorable. The other thing I want to talk about is budget. This is a question that I get a lot about how we should budget for video and how to spend on video, because video, there's different kinds of videos in the world, right? There are that TikTok, like short form reel thing that I just described. There is video, the video that we are capturing right now by giving this presentation. Then there is video that the opposite end of that is the Super Bowl commercial, right? And not everything has to be a Super Bowl commercial level of production. You have to match it to the screen. And I think a lot about, like, Matt, like the motion graphic style videos that you do super high end, like these very custom with these animations. Like, talk to us a little bit about that. Like, how do we match video to budget? Like, how do you know what to invest? What is it about the use of it that should drive that?
So one thing that people just don't have an idea of what actually a video costs, because there's so many different things that could go into it. But every video that you're getting someone to do, it's tied to someone sitting in a chair pushing buttons on a machine to get it done. It's just like every other product that gets manufactured in a specific way. So whenever we're doing motion graphic videos, we have different ways. Like, we can do something cheaper if we just use text and like don't have a lot of illustrations. But the higher the budget, the more customization we have the ability to do, the more time we can spend doing the illustration, the more time we can do custom animation. You can go and get a video done for very, very cheap, because there's tons of little web widget apps. There's, Canva and all these different things, but they're very limiting, and you can't do whatever you have in your mind. You're in a specific avenue that will only be applicable for a specific subset of people. Mm-hmm. And so when you have a brand that you've put everything into and you're managing content for, all of that stuff should be, for the most part, custom and unique to that brand. And so whenever we're figuring out budgets, it's like, you don't necessarily need to spend a Super Bowl budget wise commercial when all you're doing is a very short three series ad campaign for LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. There is a budget for that, and there is customization that we can do on that. Like, we don't need to do custom illustration to show off your mm-hmm. printer. Mm-hmm. But we do need to figure out a unique way of selling that to your clientele. So that's sort of how we can look at the way, like, your budget should match your delivery system. So if you're doing something like Mary Ellen was talking about, the people on TikTok, uh, if we put the same content in an explainer video that she is enthralled with on TikTok, it would bomb, because that's not the right vehicle. But what does work on TikTok is the real short, snippety, like jump cutty, image-based, memeable content, which those realtors have figured out a way of doing that in that avenue, and they're able to execute it very, very cheaply and very affordably. And that totally matches the avenue for delivery.
So that's actually, when I think about this from a content strategy standpoint, to just kind of pick up from that, you mentioned like the how you use it. So like if I were going to make something like an explainer video that was going to be the hero on my webpage, right, on my homepage of my website, and it was also going to show behind, if we were going to conferences, and it was going to be behind my team at the booth, or it was going to be seen on a big screen by a lot of people, and I was going to get a lot of use out of it, right, and in high impact places, that's where I would spend my money, right? Like that's where I would pour my money into that. If it's something where we're now bringing it down, there's what I would call like a mid-level video. Hey, this isn't going to be seen by, it's not going to be on the big screen, right? It's not going to be the first thing people see about my brand over and over again. Instead, it's maybe something like a demo, like some explainer little short videos where somebody has to explain how to use a certain feature. And it's like, you do want that to be good. You do want it to be nothing distracting in it. That is worth not as much as the Super Bowl, not as much as like that big hero explainer, but it's worth a little less money, right? It's like, I think about how long it's going to last too, and the impact I need it to have. And then down at the very bottom, where you start looking at videos where it is like, this is for social. I'm going to take this webinar that we've done and I'm going to cut a bunch of clips out of it. Or I've got product, I want to make product videos and I want to make them all the same. There, you make a template and it's pretty basic. And then you totally, absolutely 100% use something like Canva or Adobe Spark, or you teach yourself some basic video editing skills inside Adobe. You can do that. Like I actually 100% believe that any reasonably smart marketer could teach themselves those skills pretty quickly. The technology on that front has gotten, I think it's pretty amazing. So then in that case, use your good, expensive video editor, you'll use your animator, use your video producer to make the template for you. And then you do all of the stuff like after that, like that, or have sort of a junior team member or somebody who's really into it. Like that's valid, because you also it's how long it lasts is the way I look at it too, is how long is this going to be out in the world? So if I need that big, beautiful hero explainer, I need a year's worth of love on that thing, right? Spend the money. I need a TikTok video. It's like that's like the tissue paper of the internet, right? It does not need to last. It does not need to be. The other thing is how things look on our screens. I think, Matt, we can talk about this a little bit. I think sometimes we hear like people about, oh, something films in 4D. Does everything need to be in 4D? Like, do we need everything in high def? Like, should I be filming this in high definition right now? Like, what would make me do high def or not?
So my career started in post-production. And so in post-production, there is a saying that you shoot for delivery. So you always know what is your form of delivery. Like all the people that, are obsessed with technology, like, oh, gotta have the nicest camera, gotta have the nicest this. But if your delivery is a TikTok reel or something that's going to be watched 90% on a cell phone, there's absolutely no reason to spend a bunch of money to pay a crew to shoot on an 8K red cinema camera. It's just overkill. You're just spending the budget for no reason. There's a project that we're doing currently with a large publisher that we're shooting on journalism cameras, because they are perfect for the delivery. They're easy to use for the person who's filming them, and then we're doing the post-production packages on that. And so it's super easy for them on the front end. It shoots 1080, which is all that it's ever going to be presented at is 1080. So we spent time and money investing on the studio end for the person to shoot, so that they can shoot it at their house, and then the publisher is able to have a really good looking series of videos that look amazing, but didn't cost a ton of money because we spent the budget smartly by investing in a studio on site rather than investing in going to shoot all of the videos like at a studio where we're renting. If you watch it side by side with something that was shot in a studio, you couldn't tell the difference. But it's all about spending the budget properly and spending it efficiently. And so you always want to know what's your medium so that you can match your investment and your how you're shooting it on the proper medium.
One of the things actually says, just getting into your medium here for a minute. We're talking about filming, right? So there's two types of videos that we should talk about. One involves film, and that is something like this, like where I'm looking in a camera, and even if it's just your laptop camera, you're looking in your iPhone camera. All of those devices can actually capture remarkably high quality film compared to what we could do even just a few years ago. So that kind of film stuff, and then you might take that and apply like lower thirds, which is what we call the little tiles coming around the bottom. You might do some light motion graphics in an open and a close. And there's some terminology around that. It's kind of fun to learn, but like in the end, that's not as complex. The type of video that Matt does, specializes in, we're talking about motion graphics, and that's the stuff that moves, right? Once you have things on there that are moving. Matt, what do you mean when we say motion graphics? Like, what does that mean in video, and why is it so expensive?
It's not always that expensive, but the easiest way to explain, when I tell people that I'm an animator, they're like, oh, cool, like Pixar. And it's like, well, there's like a million types of animation, and I'm an animator that does motion graphics, which is anytime, if you've watched anything on TV, like sports, anytime there's text and graphics moving on screen, that's motion graphics. Anytime a title comes up and says, like Matt Callac at the bottom of the screen, and like what the person does, like that's motion graphics. It's literally just taking images and graphics around, and so it takes a lot of time to do that, as opposed to when you shoot a video. All of the video, all of that, not all of it, but a majority of the budget is spent on the shooting aspect. So your shooting is where the budget is spent. For motion graphics, the budget is spent on the post-production, where we're designing the graphics and stuff, getting approval on that, and then we are animating those graphics. And so there's a ton of hours that are spent on the back end. We're currently in the middle of a big project that it'll end up being 250 hours worth of post-production work. And I just want to make sure everyone can hear me. I have like a little...
Yeah, no, you're here. It's a little bit of a lag, but I'm able to hear you. One thing I would want to I just kind of add in for a second, because we're talking about budget. Let me give you some hard numbers on this. If you want to go rent a studio and have like a full proper setup with good multi-cameras, with good operators, you are looking at like $5,000 to $10,000 a day, depending on where you are and how many folks that you have in the space. Like in a more expensive city, like the real estate literally of the studio can help drive this. How many operators you want, you're almost always going to want at least two, like generally three, because video is about the things moving on the screen and the sound. And often people specialize in those things. And just in terms of setting up equipment and testing, I mean, I would say a 3-person crew in a major American city having a full day shoot, you're looking at 10 grand. Like that is what that costs. But that's also why I say, like, you don't always need that. That's not always what you need. The other I would say along those lines is that if you're going to do that, like, and you do want to get that good direct to camera in a studio, just plan for it. That's where the producer comes in really handy. You don't just want to show up. Cause like the way I look at it is when that camera is there, I want every minute. I don't want it not running, basically. Like I want that camera running. So like I produce things when we used to still have conferences, and I would take advantage of that and have somebody in there filming. I would have a spreadsheet, and they were literally in like 20-minute increments of like, you come and you do your interview, and you do your interview, and you do your interview. Like I don't give those operators like a moment of peace, basically. And then you walk out with all that footage. And then there is the post-production work. So that is a major part of the expense, right? And then you flip over, Matt, let's talk about the money on motion graphics a bit. Like, so what should somebody expect to pay for a tip? Like what's a range on like a 2-minute custom, like you've got a great brand, custom motion graphic explainer video? What does that cost typically?
There's a couple different ranges of prices that we do, but something very high end, the sort of metric that we'll use is about $15,000 per animated minute. And that's for something that's super engaging, has a ton of custom illustration, like very engaging animation style. And so it scales from there, and then you can do, less intensive on the illustration, less intensive on the motion graphics and all that stuff. But something that you hit on that I wanted to touch base on was just the planning aspect, because this is one of the reasons content is, because if you just go into a shoot or go into make an explainer video and you don't have a plan for that, you just like, I just want this interview style commercial 2-minute video or this animated explainer video, you're going to spend a ton of money on that one thing. But if you spend the money on the front end of creating a plan for what your usage is, what your delivery is, you can actually smartly build a whole entire campaign around what you're doing and not spend that much more than what you would spend on just the explainer video or just the interview style, B2B commercial video. And that just goes into a smart B2B marketing strategy on your video. Because if you're just coming piecemeal every time, that's really expensive. But if you have a plan and you can do, spend 2 days in the studio to prep all of this content, then you can stretch out that budget further than if you just had to come in 5 different times to that studio to record.
That's what it is. So that brings us kind of the last little section here. We're going to talk about the process. There is a process around creating great videos. And that first part of it is, once we brought it into these buckets, there's pre-production, there's production, and there's post-production, right? And those are the very broadest buckets. And pre-production is anything that you're doing before. Production is cameras rolling, basically. Pre is anything that happens before that. That's scripting is pre-production, right? So there's concept, there's scripting, there's like, if you can put Matt is right. The more time you put up front and you think about what is the goal of this, how do I want to use this? What are all the places I might want to use this? Because what you also don't want to do is get in there and get great footage and go, oh, actually, it turns out we did want to use it for something where we really could have used that like high definition version, but you didn't capture that way. Right. So like, that's the kind of thing that can be a very frustrating sort of mistake, but like put that time into planning. And then production usually goes pretty fast. And then post-production, that just depends on the complexity of what you're doing. So like I said, if there's a lot of motion graphics, expect post-production to be very time intense and to take a while. If it's not, then that part will go a little bit faster. Then you get into distribution. I mean, I often tell people the actual production part, I feel like, is this tiny sliver. It is a sliver of the time that is required to make a video, maybe like 10% in a lot of cases, even for things that are direct to camera, like filmed pieces. That planning part should probably be 30% of the time, frankly, if you want to get a good outcome, if you want to get something out of your investment. Thinking about, just even think about your campaign plans, right? So if you stop and think, instead of thinking, I want to make some video, so just to go back and be a video marketer, strategist here, you don't think I want to make video. You should think, okay, I got a campaign that I'm going to run, and I'm going to need certain types of content to insert at different pieces of this. So here I want a video. What kind of video? Like, then you can like let the campaign drive the choices that you make. not the other way around. Don't go make a video and then try to shove it into a campaign. Like that is just going to be frustrating for everybody, including the people that have to watch it or don't watch it, right? Because that's like, if you didn't think about the use case and how it was going to play, you could just have wasted money, basically. We talk about process a little bit, Matt. Actually, I want to talk about that. So we mentioned those 3 kind of buckets, but within that, let's talk about the pieces of that. So even we talked about script writing. We also make something called storyboards, which I think people do for film stuff sometimes too. Like movies have storyboards, but why are storyboards so important in motion graphic videos?
So I would argue that storyboards are important for all videos, but they are especially so for motion graphic videos, because since we're not shooting anything on camera, it's essential that we show you what is going to happen for each frame. And so if we have an idea for what, going back to the original, like hurry, if you're in a hurry metaphor, if we decided that like you're in a hurry is a car zooming through traffic, and like we don't show you until the video. If you want us to change that, now there's all the illustration has to be done and all the animation has to be done again. So storyboarding is an essential part of our approval process, so that we know that you like what's going to be on script. That's actually pretty accurate to the final look of the video, as far as like the framing and the like we'll show you kind of like in a description what's going to happen with the motion, so that you can see visually what is happening during each part of that. There have been times when clients have not wanted to do storyboards, and we've ended up having to go back and redo it, and they were not wanting to do storyboards because they were worried about it taking too long. So it ended up taking longer because we didn't do the storyboards. So then we had to go back and revise all the illustration, the text, and animation, because they wanted to skip storyboarding.
So yeah, I think so. When we do that process, so we write scripts, we get agreement on scripts, we do storyboards, we get agreement on storyboards, and then and only then do we go and actually start drawing. Because I think one of the things that I do think is worth noting, especially on the custom side, is a human being actually has to draw these things. There are elements of this. I know you can find stock art. There's lots of good stock stuff. Like, I mean, it will look like everybody else's. And again, sometimes that's okay. For a TikTok video, it's okay to go grab the stock. In fact, I would say it's better. But if you want that custom feel, like literally a person has to sit and draw those pieces and put them all together and make them move together. And so, I mean, I think you can imagine, you start to see like, wow, that really does take like hundreds of hours. But you get a high impact at the end. And then we typically go through review processes. Like, so once we have a video, so we'd have those storyboards, that gets approved. We're good there. Then we would do what we call a rough cut. And that is usually, rough cuts usually have, they may not have music in them, right? It's like, okay, this is just, we've taken the stuff we have, we put it together. This is kind of how it flows. Because I think sometimes even if you liked something made sense on paper when you saw the words, and it made sense in the storyboards, and it still might not quite connect when you just see it pushed together. So you take a look at that rough, and that's when we might say, oh, well, actually, it sounds weird when we say it like that. Cut that part, right? Like we start like making changes. It's more of a refinement, and typically. And we do that through a tool, like you can use things like Frame.io or Vimeo. Like they all have capabilities for you to everybody. I would say it's very important to have everybody make their comments in and on the video in the exact spot that they want to see the change. Like, because there's so much going on in video, they all have the capability to like leave a comment in a specific place. Like, oh, this looks weird. Please remove it. Right? Like you can go in or change this. We don't like this. This is like, you can everybody do that and then come back and consolidate that. And so if you do it that way, you can usually get through your video in 2 to 3 rounds of revisions total at that stage. Other sort of just in the little bit of time we have, if y'all have any questions, like you can toss them in the comments and we can try to answer them here. I know we're a little bit over time, but I do want to talk about one more thing, which is distribution for B2B video. So as we mentioned, there's a lot of ways you can be putting out your video, and it needs to match to the purpose, like the goal of it, you're going to sync those things up. Something that comes up a lot is captions and subtitles. So people watch video online a lot without the sound. So that is one factor just in terms of the user experience they do expect, especially with B2B video and you're putting it in LinkedIn. People are looking at those things at work. And whether we're working at our home in the office, they don't necessarily want to hear the voiceover. I love a good voiceover, but they don't necessarily want to hear it. So the secret, rather than just putting a bunch of text on the screen in front of people, is just to use captions and subtitles. And subtitles, the difference between the two, captions is in the same language that whatever it was. So if you're speaking English and you've got the text and it's the English, we call that a caption. It's closed captions. You might be familiar with that term. And then if it's in a different language, it's subtitles. Now we're translating it and putting it in another language and putting it down there so that, let's say you needed to distribute something in multiple languages. You might have made the original video in English. You want everybody, or there's no, whether there's voice in or not, but you want those subtitles to come. That gives you a lot of flexibility because that's a separate type of file and you can put in whatever language you want. So now you've got a lot of flexibility compared to just putting words on the screen. That actually adapts depending on the user gets to choose, tell me in this language. And I that's like, think of it that way, that that's one of the other ways that you can be more adaptable. We call them, whenever the captions are actually baked in, we actually literally call that baked in. Like you go get a file, like you would burn them in. They actually call them burned in. And that you can't change that. You can't adapt that. But we try not to do that in digital video. Any of you, if y'all have any questions about this, whether it's from a strategy standpoint, how do I figure out when and where to use video inside my content marketing strategy, feel free to reach out, follow up with me. I'm happy to talk about this all day. And similarly, if you have sort of the more technical questions around video and you want to figure out, like, should I be using motion graphics, that sort of thing, you can reach out to Matt. You can find his work over at elbowroom.co. We're at repcap.com. Although if you go to repcap.com, the video that you will see, the beautiful custom motion graphic video, Matt made that as well. So thanks, everybody. I'm so glad that you were able to join us. Like I said, send me some questions if you have any, and have a wonderful rest of your week.